Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept our humble obeisances. All glories to Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada. All glories to our revered speaker, Her Grace, Mother Malati Devi, and all glories to the assembled Vaishnavi devotees. Devotees, we thank you all for being here. Today is Friday, the last day of the busy working week. And we're fortunate we have our own auntie, Her Grace, Mother Malati. Mother, we missed you last month, and that has been like 12 years or more. So we're happy to have you this time. Thank you so much, Mother. And we will put the verse on the screen, and then you may start to speak.
Pardon?
We will put the verse on the screen.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway.
Otherwise, I have the verse. Okay. Okay. Hare Krishna. Good morning, everyone. Please accept my humbly offered obeisances. So I'll just read the verse and the purport, word by word in the purport. Manye Shuram Bhagavatam Strayadishe Samnamba Margabad Mahabini Vistachitan Ye Samyuge Jaksata Tark Shaya Putram Mamse Sunavayudam Apanatam. So the word by word in the transliteration. Manye, I think. Suram, the demons. Bhagavatam, great devotees. Tri Adishe, unto the Lord of the Threes. Saramba, enmity. Marga, by the way of. Avinirista chitan, absorbed in thought. Yea, those, samyuge, in the fight. Akashata, could see. Taraksha, putram. Garuda, the carrier of the Lord. Amse, on the shoulders. Sunaba, the wheel. Ayudam, one who carries the weapon. Apatantam, coming forward. So the translation by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. I consider the demons who are inimical toward the Lord to be more than the devotees, because while fighting with the Lord, absorbed in thoughts of enmity, they're able to see the Lord carried on the shoulder of Garuda, the son of Taraksha, Kashyapa, and carrying the wheel weapon in his hand. Report. The asuras who fought against the Lord face to face got salvation due to their being killed by the Lord. This salvation of the demons is not due to their being devotees of the Lord. It is because of the Lord's causeless mercy. Anyone who is slightly in touch with the Lord, somehow or other, is greatly benefited, even to the point of salvation, due to the excellence of the Lord. He is so kind that he awards salvation even to his enemies, because they come into contact with him and are indirectly absorbed in him by their inimical thoughts. Actually, the demons can never be equal to the pure devotees. But Uddhava was thinking in that way because of his feelings of separation. He was thinking that at the last stage of his life, he might not be able to see the Lord face to face, as did the demons. The fact is that the devotees who are always engaged in devotional service to the Lord in transcendental love are rewarded many hundreds and thousands of times more than the demons by being elevated to the spiritual planets where they remain with the Lord in eternal existence. The demons and impersonalists are awarded the facility of merging in the Brahmajyoti effulgence of the Lord, whereas the devotees are admitted into the spiritual planets. For comparison, one can just imagine the difference between floating in space and in residing in one of those planets in the sky. The pleasure of the living entities on the planet is greater than those who have no body and who merge with the molecules of the sun's rays. The impersonalists, therefore, are no more favored than the enemies of the Lord. Rather, they are both on the same level of spiritual salvation. Om Agyantimirandasya Janana Sakalaya Chakchun Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paskatya Desatarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhu-vaevyacha Patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So, oops. So in considering different messages and purports in this chapter 2 of the third canto, there were just some really beautiful, astounding lessons, instructions for one who is interested to at least some degree to make some advancement in spiritual life, to become actually in reality connected to Krishna. Uddhava used to play with dolls as a child in the form of Krishna. And he would serve these dolls as if they were Krishna. He was dressing them, feeding them, worshiping them. And in this way, he was constantly absorbed in the play of transcendental realization. So Prabhupada said that these are signs of an eternally liberated soul. An eternally liberated soul is a devotee of the Lord who never forgets him. And he further instructed that human life is meant for reviving one's eternal relationship with the Lord, and that all religious injunctions are meant for awakening this dormant instinct of the living entity. The sooner this awakening is brought about, the quicker the mission of human life is fulfilled. An example is a good family of devotees. The child gets the opportunity to serve the Lord in so many ways. A soul who's already advanced in devotional service has the opportunity to take birth in an enlightened family. And this is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 6:41, famous verse, Suchinam Srimatam Gehi Yogabastro Vijayate. Even a fallen devotee gets the opportunity to take birth in the family of a well-situated Brahman, or in a Brahmana, or in a rich, well-to-do mercantile family. In both these families, there is good opportunity to revive one's sense of God consciousness automatically, because in these families particularly, the worship of Lord Krishna is regularly being performed. So the child gets the opportunity to imitate the process of worship called archana. And the Panchara tricky formula for training persons in devotional service is temple worship, where one gets the opportunity to learn devotional service to the Lord. Another example, Maharaj Pariksit also used to play with Krishna dolls in his childhood. So in India, the children in good families are given dolls of the Lord like Rama and Krishna, or sometimes the demigods, so they may develop an aptitude of service to the Lord. And in one of the purports, Srila Prabhupada ends the purport by saying, by the grace of the Lord, we were given the same opportunity by our parents, and the beginning of our life was based on this principle. In his humble way, he was speaking about himself. By the grace of the Lord, we meant him. We were given the same opportunity by our parents, and the beginning of our life was based on these principles. So this is also a direct and indirect instruction for family life. When you take up the responsibility of family life and have children, there should only be one consideration: how to help this child to go back to Godhead and never take birth again. My god sister, now departed, the Bangalatika, she came to New Vrindavan, and she had brought with her her small son. Her son actually became a very known favorite of Prabhupada. His name was Dwarkadish. So she had this young son, and she had no husband at that point. They were separated for, I think, quite some time. And she asked Prabhupada, what is my duty? What is my duty to my son? And Prabhupada told her quite clearly, your duty is to see that he never takes birth in the material world again. So that is spoken to one person, but we can understand when Prabhupada gives instructions on a broad perimeter, it is for all of us. We should understand that. So the duty of parenthood is so grave, it's so important. And it comes down to one thing: ensure that your child goes back home, back to Godhead. And of course, that means we have to, as the parents, our grandparents, or the aunts and uncles, etc., we have to be living what we're speaking, because children are smart. They catch it right away if there's some duplicity. You do this, you don't do that. And they see, oh, you're telling me like that, but you're doing it or you're not doing it. So that means that the whole society must, what do they say? It takes a village to raise a child. That works if the whole village is united, particularly in God consciousness. I mean, whatever your goal may be, there has to be unification. But particularly in the service of Lord Krishna, there has to be unification in our temples, in our villages, in order for our children to also become convinced that this is the proper thing to do with my life. This is the goal of life. And to convince our children, not by words or pounding, but by our action, by our loving action. We also have to be convinced and practicing in that same way. So the Panchara Tricky formula for training persons in devotional service is temple worship. Transcendental service to the Lord is not mundane. The service attitude of the devotee gradually increases, and it never slackens if one remains committed. And Prabhupada was giving a very interesting point to consider. Again, the Bhagavatam is a blueprint for human life, how to live your life in a successful manner, spiritually. So generally in old age, a person is allowed to retire from mundane service. The Prabhupada points out, in transcendental service of the Lord, there's no retirement. On the contrary, the service attitude increases more and more with the progressive age. In the transcendental service, there's no satiation. Therefore, there's no retirement. Now, you may have to adjust your service according to your physical and even mental capacities. But you're not going to just kick back on a chair and stare out into space with some kind of, something in your hand. I mean, just like I'm retiring from the GBC service on the final day of this year, December 31st. And although I'll no longer be an official GBC member with an assigned zone, I'll still continue to assist when and wherever required. There's no impediment in the matter of devotional service, and neither is there need of an official title. Materially, when a man becomes tired by rendering service in his physical body, he's allowed retirement. But in the transcendental service, there's no feeling of fatigue because it's spiritual service and it's not on the bodily plane. Service in the bodily plane dwindles as the body grows older, but the spirit is never old. And therefore, on the spiritual plane, service is never tiresome. And we have the amazing life and example of Srila Prabhupada, who is always plugged into the spiritual energy to the degree that, and I've mentioned this so often, but it is the most striking example I've ever seen, and is reiterated. Of course, we have we have this name on the bed of arrows. Okay, but I mean, in our lifetime, or within the perimeter of our lifetime, we have the amazing example of Srila Prabhupada to the degree when he was no longer able to do anything for himself, even the most simple thing. He couldn't even sit up on his own. He couldn't go to the bathroom on his own. He could not do anything. Everything required assistance. And yet, he continued on, giving us the most amazing purports, speaking into a microphone that was being held by his mouth, held to his mouth by someone else, giving us the transcendental purports, these windows of enlightenment. There's no impediment in the matter of devotional service as long as we desire to continue. So, Uddhava, for example, undoubtedly he became old, but his spirit never became old. His service attitude matured on the transcendental plane. And then, as soon as he was questioned by Vidura about Lord Krishna, because he was appearing fatigued, it was like, you know, sometimes you kind of like you fall into a semi-stupor. You're there, you can be in with a group of people, a group of devotees, and suddenly you just fall into this stupor for a moment or so. He appeared to be in some form of slumber. And as soon as he was questioned by Vidura about Lord Krishna, at once he remembered his Lord by reference to the context. And he just forgot about himself and his physical situation. So that's a sign of pure devotional service to the Lord. And on that inquiry, he appeared to awaken from the slumber, and he appeared to regret that he had forgotten the lotus feet of the Lord. So by this question and this awakening, it was caused by his remembrance of the lotus feet of the Lord. And he remembered all of his transcendental service to the Lord. And by doing this, by this remembrance, he felt the same ecstasy that he used to feel in the presence of the Lord. Because the Lord is absolute, there is no difference between his remembrance and his personal presence. So Uddhava, he was silent. He remained completely silent for a moment. But then he appeared to be going deeper and deeper into ecstasy. So he was a Nityasiddha. Srila Prabhupada also was Nityasiddha. It means from birth, fully conscious of Krishna. One time somebody asked Srila Prabhupada, when did you first become conscious of Krishna? And Prabhupada said there was never a time I was not conscious of Krishna. Another person asked the question, and Prabhupada said September 1st, 1896. Happened to be his birthday. So the person asking the question thought Prabhupada didn't understand. And he says again, well, but when did you first become conscious of Krishna? And Prabhupada again, he gave that answer, September 1st, 1896. But always fully Krishna conscious. As a child, he was already immersed in Krishna's pastimes. And so, like when Uddhava's mother would call for breakfast, he was so oblivious, being immersed in the pastimes of Krishna, he didn't respond. I mean, how many children are going to be late to eat? Not too many. So Uddhava, however, was in a different dimension. Whoops, he was fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, as was Srila Prabhupada. So these ecstatic bodily changes are manifested from the spiritual plane. So by ecstatic changes, bodily, one can have shivering or even perspiration. They may appear to, as Uddhava did, go into a stupor. Prabhupada also had those symptoms at different times. Um, and they're not artificial expressions developed by practice. They come from within by that pure connectivity to Krishna, the spiritual energy. And there's three different stages of development in devotional service. So the first stage is that of following the regulated principles described in the codes of devotional service. And the second stage is that assimilation and realization of the steady condition of devotional service. In other words, you're not flickering. You remain on the path, steady on the path. And then the final stage is that of the ecstasy symptomized by the transcendental bodily expressions. Um, Pure devotional service that results in ecstatic symptoms. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu by Srila Rupa Goswami, the chief disciple, he was a chief disciple of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. These transcendental symptoms are displayed by pure devotees like Uddhava, and then they're systematically described. So the pure devotee is living constantly in the abode of the Supreme Lord, even in the present body. The pure devotee is not exactly on the bodily plane because he's absorbed in transcendental thoughts of the Supreme. So when Uddhava wanted to speak to Vidura, he came down to the abode of the Lord, Dwarka, to the material plane of human beings. But even though a pure devotee is present on the mortal world, he is here in relationship to the Lord for engagement in transcendental loving service, not for any other material cause, and neither is he forced here. The conditional changes of the living entity are explained in Chaitanya Charitamrita in the instructions given to Srila Rupa Goswami by Lord Chaitanya, that the living entities all over the universes are enjoying the effects of the respective results of the fruit of results of their own work, life after life. And some may be influenced by the association of pure devotees and get the chance to execute devotional service by attaining a taste. And this taste is the seed of devotional service. And one who is fortunate enough to have received such a seed, such a taste, is advised to sow it in the core of his heart. That seed of devotional service sown in the heart may be cultured by pouring water in the form of hearing and chanting of the holy name and pastimes of the Lord. So the example of the sun appears in the morning, it gradually rises to the meridian and then again sets in one hemisphere while simultaneously rising in another hemisphere. So Lord Krishna's disappearance in one universe and the beginning of his different pastimes in another universe take place simultaneously. It's not like close the book, it's ended. It's continuously going on. And as soon as one pastime is finished here, it's manifested in another universe. And thus is Nitya Lila, our eternal pastimes. They're going on without ending. So Uddhava was lamenting for the unfortunate persons of the world who could not recognize Lord Krishna in spite of seeing all his transcendental godly qualities. They were seeing, but they didn't recognize who is this person. from the very beginning of his appearance within the prison bars of King Kamsa up to his most Salalila, his departure, although he exhibited his potencies as the personality of Godhead in the six opulences, the wealth, faith, strength, beauty, knowledge, renunciation. Foolish persons of the world, including his own family members, could not understand he was the supreme personality of Godhead. They might have thought of him as an extraordinary historic figure because they had no intimate touch with the Lord. But even more unfortunate were those family members, members of the Yadu dynasty, of which Krishna was the chief, who were always in his company, but were unable to recognize him as the supreme personality of Godhead. So Uddhava lamented his own misfortune because he knew, although he knew Krishna was the supreme personality of Godhead, he was not able to properly use the opportunity to render devotional service to the Lord. So pure devotees of the Lord, they think of themselves as most unfortunate. And the reason is due to their excessive love for the Lord. And it's one of the transcendental perceptions of viraha, or this suffering of separation. And of course, that type of suffering is actually not suffering as we might experience and consider in the mundane world. It's actually a form of transcendental ecstasy. And then there was some nice discussion about the ocean of milk. I was thinking, nowadays, okay, what kind of milk? Organic milk, A2 milk, cow milk, goat's milk, camel milk, cat milk. What kind of milk? It's also an ocean of ghee, an ocean of world of oils. But we're only convinced of an ocean of salt water. We have the James Webb huge telescope, the Hubble telescopes. They've detected other planets that we can't possibly see with our eyes. They've detected clusters of stars or constellations, other universes, but not the aforementioned oceans of different substances. They conclude there's wonders of nature, but they have yet to detect civilizations that exist far beyond our range of sight and action. And actually, it's really interesting. Right now. So there are these space stations, artificial man-made space stations way out there. We can't see them. We can't even we can see there are stars by the light of the stars, but then beyond the stars, we're just kind of not have the ability to see. So way out there, beyond our ability to see, there's this space station, and it's as big as 3 football fields. So it's not a little thing. It's, fairly substantial in size. Um, and there's people on those space stations performing activities in accordance with the different experiments that science are trying to make to see how we could maybe possibly live in outer space one of these days, or even better than that, land on some planet like, say, Mars, and live there. But of course, we can't live there in these bodies. At least they know that. And right now, as we're sitting here having our class, there's one of these space stations out there. And as you may know, you may be aware, they're having space flights. Space flights, you go up and you come down. It's pretty quick. You go up to the edge of the universe and then you come down. And so there was one of these flights where they sent up a couple of astronauts, they meaning here in America, and I went to the space station where there were other astronauts already there for an assigned amount of time. So these 2 astronauts went up and they were supposed to be there no longer than 8 days and come back down. But guess what? They got stranded. The machine that sent them up was not fit enough to bring them back down. So they're stuck in space. I just kind of think of that for a moment. And the reason I'm mentioning it, because they're up there doing all these incredible biomaterial standard things, but they have no concept really, what is space? What is outer space? What am I? I'm an astronaut. Okay. What are you doing? Well, I'm up here doing this and that and the other thing, cleaning the space toilets. That's one of the things they're doing. I read it, so I think it must be true. Um, so you have to go to outer space to clean a toilet. You stay home and do the same thing. Um, they have no knowledge, no practical knowledge of spirituality, of the soul. So they're stranded in space, these astronauts. But what they really don't understand is that they're really stranded due to lack of spiritual knowledge. And the funny thing is, there was this other backup ship there for these other astronauts, so they don't get stranded. So they were thinking, okay, well, maybe these two astronauts can jump on that ship and get back down to Earth, and we'll send it back up. But then they realized the space suits that they are wearing that allow them to be in outer space have a different connectivity. Just like if you go to from America, you have one type of plug. Go to India, you require another type of plug. You go to England, another type of plug. You go to some parts of Europe, another type of plug. So the type of plug that they were sent to their suits that plugs them into whatever it is that keeps them going up there isn't compatible to the spaceship that's up there that could take them back. So there they are, stranded in space, but they're really stranded in ignorance in spite of all their great intelligence and knowledge. So under no circumstances can the words of persons bewildered by illusory energy of the Lord deviate the intelligence of those who are completely surrendered souls. This was mentioned in one of the purports, a very important verse. That people who are bewildered by illusory energy, no matter how much knowledge they may have, no matter how many shlokas they may have memorized, if they're bewildered, then those persons who are completely surrendered cannot be deviated by their words. And why I say it's important, because there's always going to be people attacking pure devotees, including Srila Prabhupada. He was attacked by his godbrothers, by his own students, by former students. Hellish mentality. And these same kind of people, the same kind of mentality is actively going on in campaigns today. But those persons who are firmly connected will never be deviated by these false words of persons bewildered by the illusory energy. The blasphemy doesn't touch the heart of the devotees of the Lord because they know perfectly well what is what. And their intelligence regarding the Lord is never disturbed. But those who are disturbed by the statements of doubtful non-believers, they're actually condemned by their own mentality. There was one word in one of the verses, avrit tripita disham, avrit tripta darsam. It's significant that the conditioned souls in the material world are all trying to satisfy their senses in various ways, but they fail to do so because it's impossible to be satisfied by such efforts. And um, we get that example. It's this example since day one about the fish out of water. Take the fish out of water, put it on land. You know, we have the example with the Festival of India, the fish out of water, and it's all dressed up, but it's just like flopping there. It's not happy. It's miserable. Why? Because there can be no happiness to a fish who's out of water. In the same way, the spirit soul can only be happy in the association of the supreme living being, the personality of Godhead, and nowhere else. We try, we try, we try. But without that connectivity, the connectivity to Krishna, there is going to be this disparity and this unhappiness. And the Lord, by his unlimited causeless mercy, um, he is there waiting. Okay, come on, anytime, I'm here. I'm here for you. He comes himself to display his transcendental pastimes. represented in Vrindavan, Mathura, and Dwarka, and he appears just to attract the conditioned souls back to Godhead, back home to the eternal world. But it's explained that for want of sufficient piety, onlookers are not attracted by the pastimes of the Lord. In the Gita, it's said that only those who have completely surpassed the way of sinful reaction can engage ourselves in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. There's the same problem with chanting, this lack of sufficient piety, lack of deep interest, lack of unwavering commitment, lack of taste, conflict with spiritual and material desires. Still, we want to lay claim on a so-called higher taste beyond our level of spiritual comprehension, some form of like sense gratification and distraction. The entire Vedic way of ritualistic performances is to put every conditioned soul on the path of piety. And by strict adherence to the prescribed principles of all orders of social life, then one can attain the qualities of truthfulness, control of the mind, control of the senses, forbearance, etc., and this way be elevated to the plane of rendering pure devotional service of the Lord. And only by such a transcendental vision are one's material hankerings fully satisfied. So when the Lord was present, persons who were able to satisfy their material hankerings by seeing him in true perspective, they were able to go back with him to his kingdom. But the persons who were unable to see the Lord as he is, they remained attached to the material hankerings, and they were unable to go back home, back to Godhead. They remained behind. When the Lord passed beyond the vision of all, he did so in his original eternal form. The Lord left in his own spiritual body. He didn't leave his body as is generally misunderstood by the conditioned souls. I was looking into some different considerations by different groups of people, and it was actually astounding what some people are thinking about Krishna. Oh, he was killed. How can the pure soul be killed? Even our little tiny pure soul can't be killed. And so they're thinking like that. Oh, he was killed. Oh, he wasn't killed. He wound up his pastimes, and he left in his own body because his own body is fully spiritual. We have our material body. Within this material body is the minute spirit soul that cannot be cut, cannot be burnt, cannot be chopped up, cannot be wet, dampened by any liquid. That is us. That's the real us. Otherwise, we have this temporary spiritual body that temporary material body. Spirit soul is eternal. So the material body, it is temporary. No matter how long we try to portray it or last in it, the Lord left in his own body, which is purely spiritual. And this statement defeats the false propaganda of faithless non-devotees that when the Lord passed away like an ordinary conditioned soul, he did not pass away like an ordinary conditioned soul. He appeared on his own volition in order to release the world from the undue burden of the non-believing asuras. And after doing this, he disappeared from the world's eyes. So the pure devotee knows how it's possible for the Lord to adjust opposite things, but he laments for the non-devotees who, not knowing the supreme glories of the Lord, think of him as an imaginary, simply because there are so many apparently contradictions in statements in Scripture. Factually, nothing there is contradictory. Everything is possible when we understand the Lord as the Lord is and don't try to equate him as one of us with all of our imperfections. Lord Krishna cannot be accepted of one of the human beings, even though he was playing the role of an obedient son, like bringing his father Nanda Maharaj his shoes. He brought the shoes to Nanda Maharaj on his head and offered them to him. That was one of his extraordinary activities, that simply by raising his eyebrows even, he would raise his eyebrows and he could deliver a death blow to those who were the burden of the earth. He appeared in a so-called material body, but his body was never material. Lord Krishna is so mild and merciful, and yet he's the Lord. It's described, the Lord of all kinds of threes, the supreme Lord of the three worlds, the three qualities of material nature, the three Purushas, Karmadakshaya Vishnu, Garadakshaya Vishnu, and Kirodakshaya Vishnu. There are innumerable universes, and in each and every universe there are different manifestations of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, Rudra. But there's only one Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the Vaikuntha Lokas, the Lord is merciful toward the liberated or the Nityamukta living entities. But in the mortal world, He's merciful even to the fallen souls who are Nityabhada, the forever conditioned souls. No one is the creator of Krishna. Rather, He is the creator of everyone. As He says in Bhagavad Gita 10.8, Aham sarvasya prabhavo mata sarvam pravartate. In the Gita, the Lord has explained His position clearly. But demoniac atheistic students squeeze out such an interpretation to suit their own purpose and mislead unfortunate followers into that same hellish mentality. So such unfortunate persons merely pick up some slogans or some shlokas from the great books of knowledge, but they're unable to estimate the Lord as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this movement, the Hare Krishna movement, no such consideration who is who. Anyone who takes to Krishna consciousness is first class, that's all. So our principle should be how to make people Krishna conscious, God conscious. Then our mission will be successful. Either as Grihastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyas, doesn't matter. Philosophy, the truth should be preached, and then everyone will be happy. That is Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada quoted Sabai Mana Krishna Padara Vindayar Vachamsi Vaikuntha Gunar Varnane. So this is one verse is quoted in many places, this 9:4:18. There is no instance of Krishna consciousness how the devotee does not lose a single moment without thinking of Krishna. This beautiful example, King Ambarish, always fixed his mind on the lotus feet of the Lord, this Krishna Padara Vindayor, always talked of him only. We should take this opportunity in life to become as good as a great saint, simply not talking unnecessarily about unwanted persons. We should either talk of Krishna or chant Hare Krishna undeviatingly. The Satatam Kirtanyo Mam, the Kirtana Sadahari, so Sadatad Bhava Bhavita. If we practice like that, then there is a chance of being transferred to Krishna just after leaving this body. So somehow or other, we must always be absorbed in thoughts of Krishna. And we get these examples from the great authorities. We have to practice this Krishna consciousness. In the material world, we have to work. Without work, we can't maintain our family, our body. This material world means to maintain by working. And the spiritual world means natasya kayanam karnanam na vidyate. There's nothing to work, as Krishna has nothing to work. He's simply enjoying. And Krishna's associates, they're also enjoying. They have nothing to work. That is the spiritual world. Chintamani prakara sadmanasokalpa vriksha. It's a different world. Because there's no material body, there's no need for material world. That is a different world. This material world means we have to work and adjust things for our maintenance. We can't escape. Still, we have to become Krishna conscious. So things are to be adjusted as is prescribed by great authorities. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, you find the regulative principles. It's an art to understand and to practice as is being provided by this Krishna conscious movement by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. Because a devotee has nothing to do with material things, even if we work for maintenance of the body. That is not material. Just like Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, he was a great magistrate. Generally, great magistrates do not write so many great books as Antapurnam, but he was on a different transcendental platform, so it was possible. The mind may be absorbed in Krishna's sats atatam kirtanayomam, distasyanti charamanti cha. It is possible by practice. So many other examples that we can remain fully Krishna conscious in spite of being engaged in so-called material activities. It is possible. I've mentioned often this wonderful letter Srila Prabhupada wrote to Gopal Krishna Maharaj, who was working for Pepsi Cola Company as a marketer. But he'd come to Krishna, and then he was seeing consciousness, so he was thinking, should I quit this job? Prabhupada wrote, you're not a karmi. Any person whose constant occupation is Krishna consciousness, you're not a karmi. He's a devotee in all circumstances. So if the preachers in our Krishna conscious movement are sincere devotees of Krishna, Krishna will always be with them because he's very fine and favorable to all his devotees. Just like Arjuna and Krishna were victorious in the battle of Kurukshetra, this is Krishna conscious movement will surely emerge victorious if we just remain sincere devotees of the Lord and serve the Lord according to the advice of the predecessors, the six Goswamis, and other devotees of the Lord. This was from a purport, Madhya Lila, 479. So here's Krishna. In the Padma Purana, Archya Vishnu Siladir Guru Shu Naramati. These are instructions. So anyway, we may be in an imperfect stage of devotional service, but if we follow the instructions and gradually we come to the perfectional stage, there is no hopelessness. Just continue. It's not that immediately one becomes perfect, but if we continue with the process, then we become perfect. This last consideration was from an evening darshan on July 8th, 1976 in Washington, D.C. So whatever comes our way, just continue. As Srila Bhakti Vinod wrote that famous poem, just continue chanting, just continue chanting. This may happen, that may happen, just continue chanting. And Prabhupada is saying the same thing. If we continue the instruction, then gradually we come to the perfectional stage. There is no hopelessness. Continue. It's not that immediately one becomes perfect. If we continue with the process, then we'll become perfect. So it's divine grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. That was his recent appearance day. And we all had a wonderful opportunity to remember him, to remember his glorious activities, to remember his glorious devotees, and to give our own selves the opportunity to purify and go back home, back to Godhead. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Mother, as always. Personally, and I believe many devotees here also, I very much love hearing from you for so many reasons, but particularly because it's almost impossible for you to speak Krishna Katha without glorifying Srila Prabhupada. I've listened to you many times, and every time you speak about the glories of Srila Prabhupada. Yes, so I have this question. I was very much touched when you were describing the final days of Srila Prabhupada, which I do not want to talk about it because it's very emotional. But as you were describing that at the point Sri Prabhupada was so weak, he had to be fed. Some devotees say that a pure devotee like Sri Prabhupada does not feel any material pain. And therefore, whatever we might have seen Sri Prabhupada exhibit as going through pain is just a drama. And
it's just what? It's just what?
A drama.
Okay.
And personally, I feel a little bit disturbed about such statements because when I know that this person is going through these uncomfortable situations because of me, then it will kind of encourage me to do the right thing because I saw him inconveniencing himself to help me. But if I think that he actually wasn't feeling it, so don't worry about it, it doesn't kind of give me the impetus to do what is right. So what do you say in such situations when people say that the pure devotee does not feel pain?
Both things are true. He's not on a material platform, so he's not experiencing material pain as we might feel because of our bodily connectivity. At the same time, he's feeling very pained as Uddhava was also feeling pained, as Vidura was feeling pain to see the behavior as family members who were not understanding the actual position of Lord Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in the same way, to not see the pure devotee as a pure devotee of the Lord, it's actually painful because then in that kind of consciousness, we're cutting short our opportunity to make spiritual advancement. So that is very painful for a pure devotee. And we come and we arrive here on this world in different levels of advancement. We get connected with the pure devotee who is trying to give us the pure way. Here, you do this, and then this will happen to you. You become free of your shadows of illusion. You become free of your false desires, meaning materialistic desires for sense gratification. And we hear this, and momentarily we can get caught up and believe it. And then the desires for sense gratification and distraction come again, and we get bewildered. That is our unfortunate, Prabhupada calls it our dog-like stubbornness. You know how a dog is so stubborn, fight for a bone. It's like that. But there's only one remedy. Prabhupada has said it from day one. I have only brought one remedy, one medicine. Please take it. Somebody can say, but I've chanted for like the last over 50 years and I'm not a pure devotee yet. That may be. That most likely is a fact due to this dog-like stubbornness of wanting some level of comfort in the material world. So when we see someone like Prabhupada struggling, we relate to our own discomforts if we were in that situation. But we shouldn't give up. That's what Prabhupada is saying. That we shouldn't give up. We shouldn't get discouraged. We shouldn't become hopeless. And nor should we cheat ourselves or others. We have to keep going. I mean, I realize I've mentioned this many times. We came not that we were Goswami material. We could be, we are the material, we could flip over, but we just have this unfortunate stubbornness. At the same time, keep chanting, keep serving, and beg for the mercy of the spiritual master, beg for the mercy of the devotees. You know.
Well, thank you so much, Mother, for your motherly advice. But Hare Krishna Africa, together with devotees all over in Africa, have this humble concern, which I'll try to get in touch with you about it later on. But it is that in the early stages of devotional service, Srila Prabhupada sent his disciples to go to distant places.
Yes.
Your humble self, you went to London to open the temple there. Different devotees went to different places to establish Krishna consciousness based on the instructions of Srila Prabhupada. Later on, Africa was a very difficult, harsh place, not as much as it used to be. Africa is still a difficult place, but not as it used to be. But we had this great devotee, Mother Ladini, who sacrificed to go to Africa. And we all know the story, how she was executed. And it is the desire of Hare Krishna Africa and the devotees in Africa that ISKCON world recognize this great devotee. And the least we think ISKCON could do to remind devotees of her greatness and dedication is to have a day in at least ISKCON calendar to remember her. But we'll try to get in touch with you later on to see how best this could materialize. But we think that she is somebody the world, or at least ISKCON, should never forget about.
Yes. Selfless servant.
Very, very, very selfless.
And just like every selfless service, you're going to have these detractors. Detractors.
Yeah.
Because there's always envious people who appear as devotees. They've got tilak, they've got bead bag.
Yeah.
And yet they speak abominably against those persons who have actually shown by their example how to serve selflessly.
Yeah.
Because of their envy, they cannot tolerate seeing someone glorified. And so then they concoct abominable stories. So when a person is clear in their, even we are fallen souls ourselves, but clear about Srila Prabhupada and those devotees who are serving Srila Prabhupada, we're not going to become distracted by these sordid tales.
Well, thank you so much, Mother. Like we said, it's always an honor to have your association. Dear devotees, if anyone may have something to ask or share, please, you may do so before the end of the class today.
Otherwise, I can just offer my head at your feet because it's 12 o'clock and
so I think Govinda Prabhu had something to say briefly.
Govinda's there. I didn't see him. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, he's always in his Garuda.
In his car.
Yes.
Yeah, I just saw him on Janmashtami.
Yeah.
Haribol, Govindaji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Mother. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to you, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to assembled devotees. Mother, my question is about a pure devotee. You just said that a pure devotee is not under the moves of nature, so therefore, he does not feel pain as we may think that, relate our feelings to the feelings of a pure devotee. But you just made us understand clearly that a pure devotee is on the higher platform, so therefore this material affiliations does not affect him. But I would like to know.
Not in the same way that
yes,
one who is attached to the body.
To the body, yes.
There may or may not be some feelings of pain, but they're not overcome. They don't succumb to the pain. They don't become predominated by the pain.
That's right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So the question was, what is the difference between the those who are free from the moves of nature and a Paramahamsa?
Say again. What is
Are
you driving? Are you driving? I mean, I don't want to see I'm sorry, but I have had the experience of a devotee who was driving and lost his life along with two others.
I'm driving.
Yeah, you probably need to pull over before you ask questions.
Yeah. Anyway, the question was, what is the difference between those who have transcended the three moves of nature and Paramahamsa? What is the difference between them? To understand, the Paramahamsas don't see any difference between man and woman. It does not see difference. And so therefore, before a Paramahamsa can preach, he has to step down to the second level so that he can speak to the conditioned souls.
But
otherwise, he sees everything as perfect.
It's not. So he appears to step down. It's like you're talking to a child. You know calculus, you know higher mathematics, but you're talking to a little child. So then you will speak in a different language that the child can get the idea. 1 + 1 is 2. Now, you may know in a very highly technical way how to differently, in a high level, you might say, oh, 1.5 + 1.5 + 1.5 + 1.5 is 2. And the child will go, no, 1 and 1 is 2, because they don't know the differentiation. So in the same way, a Paramahansa, he may adjust, but he doesn't leave his position. He's still Paramahansa.
Okay, so his position is not different from those who have transcended the three moves of nature. It's the same platform.
There can be different levels, even up on the higher levels. I was just reading about this, so it's very interesting. And again, if we try to understand something, because we're not on that level and we're trying to understand it, it's bewildering. Because we don't have the adhikari, the realization to actually understand it. So it's sufficient to know that one who is fully purified and on the highest level, and for us the highest level is for full absorption in Krishna consciousness. But we don't have that full absorption at this point in time. At the same time, the one who does, he can, for the sake of us, adjust his speech, adjust his actions in order to assist us. But he doesn't become bewildered. And then there's various degrees of loving Krishna. But it doesn't matter which degree. Once that love is attained, you're there, you're connected fully.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mother Malati. Please forgive me. Before you leave, please allow me to cause a little bit of discomfort in the sense that we heard you share with us that by the end of the year, you're no more going to be a JBC.
Correct.
So that is quite sad to hear, but at the same time, we're very.
Why is it sad? It's just I'm not stopping devotional service.
That is so. Yes. So it is said that to us that okay, Mother is no more the JBC. But the most interesting part of it all is that you shared with us that you're still going to continue to serve, which is very.
What would I do otherwise?
Yes, which is very.
You don't need a particular role or designation in order to serve Krishna.
Yes.
And I hope, and to serve Krishna's devotees.
Yes.
So I will still continue probably doing what I'm doing now without that role, because then I don't have to do all the administrative stuff.
Yes. Yeah. I'm really appreciating, I believe the devotees are also appreciating in the sense that this is a very exemplary act that we all should try to emulate, that we do not serve only when we have titles attached to our names, but simply because we are trying to be devotees, we are prepared to serve Srila Prabhupada and the devotees. So we're very much grateful for your service, and may Shri Guru and Krishna continue to bless you and do more for us because we need you. Hare Krishna. And with that being said, Mother will have to leave, so we're going to humbly request all the devotees to kindly unmute. And we all chanted the loudest Hare Krishna Maha Mantra to express our appreciation to our revered auntie, Her Grace, Mother Malati Devi. Jai.
Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Ram.
And please pray that Govinda's wheels remain on the road.
Yes.
Yeah, Hare Krishna.
Grace, Mother Malati, Devi, Dasi ki.
Jai.
This confounder Charya Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Jai.
Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki. Jai.
Hare
Hare
Krishna. Hare Krishna.